The plane landed in the dark. He stepped onto Burkina Faso soil with no trace of who he really was. No name, no emotion, no identity. Just a mission. They called him Ghost because he was never seen, only felt when the job was done. His orders were simple. Eliminate Ibrahim Traoré. A voice crackled through his earpiece in French-accented English. Your target is dangerous. He's disrupting the balance we've kept for years. Don't think, just execute. Ghost checked his silencer, slid it into the holster. In the world he came from, doubt was a weakness, and feelings were fatal. But something about this job felt different. A child darted past him at the airport, barefoot and laughing. A woman chased after, cradling a bowl of mangoes. Life here felt raw, real. He shook it off. Focus, he told himself. You're not here to feel, you're here to finish. But as he disappeared into the Ouagadougou night, the mission that was supposed to be clean, quick, and cold began to shift. And for the first time in years, Ghost felt something. He just didn't know yet. It was the beginning of his undoing. 2 days passed. Ghost had tracked his target from the Presidential Guard compound to a quiet clinic in a dusty village called Koubri. No bodyguards, no armored vehicles. Just Traoré, dressed in a worn shirt, comforting a crying child whose leg had been wounded by a mine. Ghost aimed from a rooftop across the street. His finger rested on the trigger. Easy, one shot, clean, done. But his hand wouldn't move. He zoomed in on Traoré's face. There was no fear in the man's eyes, only concern, warmth, and something Ghost hadn't seen in a long time. Truth. Traoré wasn't giving orders. He was carrying crates of supplies himself, sweating in the sun like a regular man. Not hiding, not running. How is this a threat? Ghost muttered. His comm buzzed. Why haven't you fired? He turned it off. Down below, Traoré looked up. For a split second, their eyes met. Ghost froze. And then, Traoré smiled. That smile shattered something deep inside him. He lowered the rifle. This mission wasn't going to be easy, because for the first time, Ghost wanted to understand his target, not destroy him. That night, Ghost sat alone in a crumbling motel outside the capital. He opened a folder he wasn't supposed to. Satellite photos, intelligence files, Western media reports claiming Traoré was turning into a dictator. But something didn't add up. Why would a dictator heal villagers with his own hands? Why would soldiers risk their lives with loyalty, not fear? He remembered the kid Traoré carried earlier, her eyes, her trembling fingers clutching his collar. That wasn't staged, that was real. His mind spiraled. He had done over 40 kills in 10 countries. None ever made him hesitate. But this was different. Outside, a radio played a local station. The host said in Mossi, Captain Traoré has refused foreign aid today, choosing to rely on his people's strength. He believes Africa can stand on her own. Ghost looked at himself in the mirror. Who are you really working for? He whispered. The reflection didn't answer, but inside the perfect weapon was starting to break, and the man buried deep under years of silence was beginning to wake up. Ghost lay awake in a dusty motel room outside Ouagadougou. The fan above spun slowly, making a low ticking sound, like a countdown. But he wasn't counting seconds. He was counting regrets. That afternoon, he had followed Captain Ibrahim Traoré to a village where the leader met with widows of fallen soldiers. Ghost had prepared to strike. He had the perfect shot, clean, silent, untraceable. But something stopped him. A child ran up to Traoré, barefoot, dusty, eyes wide. "Are you my father now?" she asked. Her real father had died serving under Traoré's command. Ghost froze in the shadows. Traoré knelt. "No, little one, But I will protect you like I protect this country. That's a promise. Ghost's hand trembled on the rifle. That night, the memory of his own childhood clawed its way back. The face of the man who abandoned him. The missions he took to bury that pain. He closed his eyes. But instead of Traoré's death, he kept seeing that child. That one sentence haunted him. Are you my father now? Ghost wasn't here to kill a villain. He was here to kill the only man brave enough to become a father to a broken nation. By the next morning, Ghost had made a decision, but not fast enough. News broke that Traoré's convoy had been ambushed on the northern road. 3 soldiers were killed. Traoré barely escaped. Ghost watched the report from a small electronics shop, eyes fixed on the screen as villagers around him gasped and whispered. Foreign forces, one man said. They want him gone. Another nodded. He fights for us. That's why they fear him. Ghost walked out, his jaw tight. He knew that attack wasn't random. It was a message. And worse, it wasn't from him. It was from the same global hand that had trained him. He wasn't the only operative on the ground anymore. He had hesitated. And now others were moving in. Ghost returned to the rooftop where he once aimed at Traoré. He stared across the city, the same scope, the same rifle. But now it pointed nowhere. His mission had become something else, a race against time. He wasn't just fighting himself anymore. He was fighting the very system that had built him. And if he didn't stop them, the next bullet wouldn't miss. The village was quiet. Too quiet. Ghost had followed rumors of another planned hit, this time at a rural hospital that Traoré often visited in secret. Locals said he went there without guards, bringing supplies himself, tending to wounded children of war. Ghost arrived first, but he wasn't alone. A black jeep parked across the dirt road. 2 men inside. Foreign faces, cold eyes. One raised binoculars. The other checked a rifle. Ghost's blood ran cold. He moved silently, climbed atop the building, and waited. Traoré arrived an hour later with only a driver, no security, just 2 crates of medicine in the back. Then it happened fast. One of the men raised his weapon. Ghost didn't think. He reacted. Bang! He shot first. The would-be assassin fell. The other man panicked and drove off. Ghost didn't follow. He ran to the hospital. Inside, chaos. Traoré was on the floor, shielding a crying boy. A nurse screamed. But the sound that tore into Ghost's chest was the wail of a mother cradling her child, wounded from flying glass. Ghost stood frozen. The boy looked up at him, blood on his shirt, and whispered, "Are you the bad man?" Ghost didn't answer, because he didn't know anymore. The sun was low when Ghost returned to the scene of the hospital. He stood behind a broken wall, watching Traoré give instructions to his team. They were rebuilding with their bare hands. No cameras, no press, just quiet work. One soldier's leg was bleeding, but he refused to sit. "We finish this roof first," he said. Ghost stared at their boots. None of them ran during the attack. Even the nurse who screamed had shielded children with her body. Ghost leaned against the wall, dizzy. He had seen men run from battles 10 times smaller. But these people, they stood. Why? He wasn't used to loyalty that wasn't bought or forced. Traoré had no private jets, no offshore accounts, just a rusted truck and a radio always turned low. Ghost realized this wasn't fear-driven obedience. It was love, and that shook him. Because he had killed for men who inspired none. And now, he was trying to unmake a man who gave others a reason to live. A man whose soldiers bled to build roofs, not run for cover. Ghost traveled to a remote village where Traoré's mother was buried. No guards, no walls. Just a tiny graveyard with sun-worn crosses and a single baobab tree. Villagers said Traoré still came there, alone, every month, even now, despite death threats. Ghost crouched behind an old shed and waited. By sundown, a dusty motorcycle approached. It was him, Captain Ibrahim Traoré. No entourage, no ceremony, just a bouquet of wildflowers in his hand. Ghost watched through his scope. His finger trembled on the trigger. Just one breath, one squeeze. But then Traoré knelt by the grave and began to speak, softly. "I know I should be afraid, Mama, but I can't stop now. Not when they look at me with hope. Not when the children still wake up to hunger." Ghost blinked. His heart pounded. He lowered the rifle. What kind of man risks his life just to whisper to a grave? A coward wouldn't. A monster wouldn't. Only a son. Or a leader. Or maybe both. Ghost felt something crack inside his chest. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was truth. But for the first time in years, he felt human. That night, Ghost broke into a military outpost. Not to kill, to listen. He had overheard chatter of a coup being planned, not from inside Burkina Faso, but from beyond. He found an old transistor radio hidden in a wooden box. It was playing a local station, a speech from Traoré. "I was not chosen by foreign powers. I was chosen by the pain of my people, and I will not sell them for silence." The soldiers listening didn't even realize Ghost was there. They sat motionless. One of them wiped a tear, another held his chest. Then, static. Someone tried to jam the signal, but the radio, old and battered, fought back. The voice returned, cracked but still clear. Ghost clutched the edge of the table. This wasn't a man they were following. This was a voice that made broken people feel whole again. How do you kill that? He turned to leave quietly, but one of the soldiers noticed him and saluted. No fear, no weapon, just a nod of respect. Ghost didn't understand, but he felt it, and he knew the mission had changed forever. Ghost sat in a dusty cyber cafe in Ouagadougou. He needed information. Coordinates, escape routes. But something else pulled his eyes. A news site had published an old photo. Captain Ibrahim Traoré hugging a boy during a flood rescue years ago. The caption read, "The captain who carried more than sandbags. He carried our hopes." Ghost zoomed in. The boy in the picture looked familiar. He gasped. He had seen that boy just days ago, selling mangoes by the checkpoint where Ghost had scouted Traoré's convoy. That boy had offered Ghost a mango with a smile and said, "Don't look so angry, sir. We're safe now." Ghost closed the laptop. He leaned back, his chest rising fast. He didn't know whether to cry or scream. He was sent to kill the man that child believed in. And worse, he almost did it without a second thought. Suddenly, Ghost didn't feel like a weapon. He felt like a lie. And that photo? It didn't break his cover. It broke his soul. It was past midnight when Ghost was ambushed. Not by Traoré's men, by mercenaries, foreign, masked, and well-armed. They weren't here to arrest him. They were here to erase him. Ghost dodged into an alley, bleeding, breathless. He realized it instantly. He was disposable. A pawn sent to do their dirty work, and now, a loose end. He collapsed behind a burned-out vehicle, vision spinning. Just before blacking out, he saw boots rushing in. Burkina boots. A young soldier knelt beside him and radioed in backup. "Don't worry, you're safe," the soldier whispered, not knowing who Ghost truly was. They carried him to a safe house and treated his wounds. He wanted to speak, to confess. But guilt choked him. Why would they save him? Why show mercy? Unless this was the heart Traoré led with. A heart that didn't ask first, "Who are you?" but instead asked, "Are you hurting?" Ghost woke in the safe house, bandaged and weak. The scent of fried yam and spicy sauce filled the air. An old woman entered. She smiled, placed a plate beside him, and said gently, "You look hungry, son. He hadn't eaten in 2 days. He ate in silence. Across the room, the young soldier who saved him was praying softly, his rifle by his side. Ghost swallowed hard. No one here asked questions. No one suspected he was the enemy. But they still fed him, still treated his wounds, still called him son. He remembered a mission in Syria where a wounded child had reached for his hand, and he pulled away. He remembered another in Libya where he left a man crying over his brother's body and walked on. But here, even a killer like him was given bread and kindness. He couldn't hold it back anymore. That night, as rain fell outside, Ghost cried for the first time in 20 years. Not from pain, but from the weight of everything he had never questioned. Until now, Ghost had healed enough to walk again. The young soldier, now his silent companion, led him out at dawn. They crossed a narrow field heading to a hidden barracks. Ghost thought it was a trap. But then, he saw him. Captain Ibrahim Traoré. He wasn't surrounded by guards, no armor, no fear. Just a simple green uniform, boots dusty from travel, and sharp eyes full of fire. Ghost froze. This was the man he was sent to kill. Traoré stepped forward and said quietly, "I know who you are, and I know why you're here." Ghost's hands twitched near his sidearm. But he didn't reach. He couldn't. "I should hate you," Traoré continued. "But I don't, because I know what they did to men like you. They broke you, used you, and then left you empty." Ghost couldn't speak. His throat burned. For the first time in his life, the perfect weapon felt seen. Traoré didn't order his arrest. He offered Ghost tea. That moment shattered everything. They sat beneath a mango tree, cups steaming in their hands. No cameras, no soldiers, just two men. Traoré began to speak, softly but clearly, as if he had waited his whole life for someone to listen. "I didn't rise to power for glory," he said. "I rose because children were dying, land was being stolen, and our own leaders danced for outsiders while our people starved." Ghost stared into the fire. Ashes danced like spirits in the wind. "My mother died with dust in her mouth," Traoré continued. "Not because she was sick, but because no one came when we cried. I promised myself, if I ever got the power to change things, I'd burn the chains before they touched another child." Ghost clenched his fists. This wasn't a terrorist. This wasn't a tyrant. This was a man the world should have been listening to. Instead, they sent him to kill him. And now Ghost didn't want to walk away. He wanted to stand beside him. But was it too late? Traoré stood to leave. "Your people will come looking for you," he said. "They don't leave messes lying around." Ghost nodded slowly. "I know. But I see it in your eyes. You're not a weapon anymore." Ghost looked up. "What am I then?" Traoré didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached out his hand. And Ghost, without thinking, took it. A handshake that felt like a lifetime. A soldier and a killer. A patriot and a pawn. In that grip was something bigger than forgiveness. It was rebirth. Traoré turned to leave, but paused. "If you choose to stay, you'll fight not just enemies, but everything you were trained to believe." Ghost looked around. The land, the people, the boy with the mango, the woman who fed him. He finally whispered, "Then let's begin." The wind carried his words far, and from that moment forward, Ghost was no longer a shadow. He was a shield. Just before midnight, the radio cracked. A voice Ghost knew too well. "Ghost, your window is closing. Finish the mission. Now." He froze. They knew he hadn't pulled the trigger. He whispered back, "Mission aborted. Target is not hostile." The silence was sharp. Then came the reply. "You're compromised. Extracting, with or without you." And that's when Ghost saw it. The drone lights above the city. A strike team was coming. Not for Traoré, for everyone. They had planned a quiet assassination. Now they wanted a massacre. Ghost ran, heart thundering in his chest. Traoré was in a public school shelter, helping organize food deliveries for displaced families. Ghost burst through the gate, yelling, "You have to leave now. They're coming. Not for me. For all of you." The soldiers raised their rifles. Traoré stopped them. He looked Ghost in the eye and asked just one question. "Are you with us?" Ghost nodded. This was no longer about orders. This was about children, mothers, truth. It was now or never. The first blast shook the outer wall. A child screamed. Dust fell from the ceiling. Ghost grabbed a rifle, not to kill, but to protect. Beside him, Traoré took position, calm as a rock in a storm. Soldiers and villagers formed a line, shielding women and children. "They didn't send troops to arrest," Ghost said bitterly. "They sent drones to erase." Traoré simply nodded. "They fear a free Africa more than 1,000 bullets." The first wave came. Parachutes in the dark sky. Ghost's former comrades. He recognized one, a man he once called brother. But he didn't hesitate. He fired, not to kill, but to knock the rifle from his hand. "Stand down," Ghost yelled. "This is not war. This is murder." The man paused, lowered his weapon. And just like that, a moment of choice spread like fire. Some attackers dropped arms, others ran. The drones never fired, because Ghost had already hacked their signal before arriving. He never wanted to die. But tonight, he would have. For them. For the first time in his life, Ghost wasn't invisible. He was hope. The sun rose over Ouagadougou like a blessing. No bombs, no bloodshed, just a city still standing, and a people finally seen. The world watched the footage, a foreign assassin turned defender, standing beside Traoré, guarding schoolchildren with a borrowed rifle. And in a live broadcast that shook the world, Traoré said, "They sent a ghost to silence me, but he became a witness. The world must hear this. Africa is not a playground for empires. We are not weak. We are not alone. We have voices. We have courage. We have ghosts who now fight for truth." The crowd wept. Mothers hugged Ghost. The boy who once threw a mango now called him uncle. Ghost never gave his real name, but the people gave him one. Bouclier, the shield. He stayed, not as a soldier, but as a builder, a mentor, a man reborn. Now, my brothers and sisters watching this, did this story touch your heart? Did you cry? Did you feel it in your bones? If yes, then do me one favor. Like this video. Subscribe now. And drop a comment with just one word. Freedom. Let the world know. Truth is louder than lies. And sometimes, even a ghost can change the world.